With the unfortunate news of Malik Neighbors tearing his ACL, it raises the question, why are around 15 teams still using turf fields? Does turf fields increase the risk of lower extremity injuries? And the amount of money that's saved on having turf fields, does that really offset the cost of losing these star players for seasons? And some off, let's talk about those early turf surfaces. Those definitely increase the risk of injuries, especially lower extremity injuries. That's because those were pretty much just turf slipped over a bunch of concrete. Increased risk of rotational traction, surface stiffness that results in ACL tears, Achilles tendon. The rationale behind why turf fields increase the risk of injury is basically because they cause this increased shoe to surface friction, which doesn't occur with natural grass. There's reduced cleat release because the artificial strands sometimes have little slits in them that the cleats can get caught on, and that happens on synthetic surfaces. So let's look at the science. It shows there is a definite correlation between artificial turf surfaces and an increased risk of injuries like ACL in both NFL and college athletes compared to a grass surface. Nowadays, they use something called a third generation turf, which features longer grass basically and infill materials that make the pressure to surface ratio less intense, less hard like concrete. These turf surfaces, if they have a higher fill density of fiber and higher kind of compaction, meaning the surface is pounded down a little bit harder, still does increase the risk. How does natural grass be safer? Like, how does it reduce the risk of injury? And that's because it provides this increased shearing ability, which reduces that peak force and torque. You can imagine that because no matter how it is, grass is pretty soft, and there's not many ways in which that turf grass can reach that same level of compressibility and just natural. So this is that third generation turf. And although it has shown to reduce injuries significantly in non-American football type sports, it still shows an increased risk of lower extremity injuries in NFL type sports, college football type sports. Also over costs, because it's usually about money, right? So the maintenance of a grass field in the NFL is about $30,000 to $50,000, but that's not the only thing. There's other unanticipated costs which can raise up to 100,000 yearly. So let's say it's 100,000 yearly. That's the cost in. Turf fields much lower. They're about 7,000 to 23,000. So you're saving, let's say it's 7,000. You're saving 90,000 a year. How much money can an NFL team lose from losing a marquee player for the season? Anywhere between $1 and $10 million. Looking at 2024, the NFL lost $213 million from lower injury bodies and lost salary due to players being out. And that's just salary. That doesn't include lost ticket sales, revenue, just interest in teams, playoff game payouts, and all of that for losing their players that could have gotten them. Let's look at just MetLife Stadium, not even these other stadiums. So Nick Bosa, Jabril Peppers, Aaron Rodgers, Neighbors, they've all suffered notable season-ending injuries, and those are all star players. That is a huge amount of money lost. Just Aaron Rodgers. Imagine how much money they lost on that season in terms of ancillaries that he could have brought in terms of playoff money he could have brought in terms of just so many things just with him playing. Let's just talk wide receivers. 6 wide receivers in the first 2 rounds since 2014, and 5 out of 6 of them have suffered season-ending injuries in MetLife Stadium. So are you telling me that these players, although not all of them are great players at this point in time, we don't know what they could have been without these injuries? You're telling me that $100,000 a year in cost for this stadium is worth all this money that you're losing on these season-ending injuries? Doesn't make sense to me. Switch to grass field.